Welcome back to Geek Corner and our latest video. Today we are hosted by Paul at Kramer and we're going to be talking about cables. Cables are something that's often overlooked. It's a really easy way for an integrator to save money and cut corners, but it's actually really important. So Paul, why should we be worrying about the quality of cables?
Well, cables are something that, as Richard said, that people do often skimp on, and I don't think they often realise the implications of it, because there's so many different factors that make cables different. There's things such as shielding, and a good shielded cable prevents against things that we see in the real world, like wireless microphones, mobile phone signals, Wi-Fi access points. All these sort of things can have an effect on the quality of the signal and how it comes through. But also things like, for example, the amount of data that you can pass through a cable, that affects the resolution and quality of the end result that you see. And this is all what affects that real world result in an auditorium, for example.
When you've got lots of people using their mobile phones,
exactly,
as opposed to when the system's handed over. Okay, great. So what cables are we going to look at?
So we're going to look at three types today. We're going to look at HDMI, which is by far the biggest probably format in use for video transmission these days. We've got USB-C, massively growing in popularity because of its small format factor and the fact it can do so much over one single connector, but also twisted pair cabling or cat cabling as it's otherwise known. Traditionally used in networking, but these days used so much in a wide range of AV applications.
Brilliant, let's look at some cable. Good morning. Now we're here today with Paul from Kramer to look at quality of cables, and in part of our series we're looking at HDMI cables at the moment. So Paul, can you just talk us through what we've got set up here?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Richard. So what we've got here, a pattern generator that is outputting 4K video, 60 Hz frame rate as hard as it possibly can to this display. So it's going over two cables. We've got a Kramer cable, but also an unbranded cable here as well that we're going to compare.
They're both 20 metres,
yeah.
They're identical in that respect, but the key difference, in fairness, is one cable is about 10 times the price of the other.
Correct, yes.
So we want to look at why you would spend more money on your Pro install and making sure that the cable is correct.
Yep.
Right, so this is the expensive cable running the screen as hard as we can run it,
yep.
And we can't improve the signal quality. Right, let's just swap over to the cheap one then.
Yep.
So we've done the handshake, it's tried to do a handshake, and what's happened, Paul?
Okay, so basically what's happened here, we're outputting the same signal. So this is the full 4K, but effectively the cheaper cable has not been able to handle that signal, so we've got no image on the screen.
So what can we do just to get an image up on the screen?
What we can do is a couple of things. We can either down the resolution or we can down the frame rate, which effectively reduces the amount of data that's going over that cable.
So what are you going to do? You're going to?
So I'm going to reduce the frame rate, which is the amount of frames per second that's actually coming through.
And you've reduced it down to?
To 30 Hz.
So we've halved it?
Yeah, effectively it's half the data.
And we've now got a signal?
Now we've got a signal.
So that would work as well as if we left it at the frame rate high and halve the resolution. You just got to halve
Correct.
something basically to make this cable
to
work.
down the amount of data that's going through to, it's like water in a pipe.
Fine. So the first thing is we've got effectively a lower resolution picture or a lower frame rate picture with the cheaper cable. What else can affect these cables?
There's a number of factors, but one of them could be interference. So in real world installs there's obviously a lot of interference with things like wireless signals or mobile phones or induction loops and things like that. So that can be another factor which some cheaper cables can be not quite so good at protecting against.
So mobile phone next to the cable as it goes into the screen, what's happened?
So the interference from that has stopped that cable working. Could be to do with poor shielding or something like that. There can be a number of factors that can lead to
So it's really
that.
common stuff that people will have and affect it. Can we just put it back to the more expensive cable?
Yeah, of course.
And phone in exactly the same place.
Yeah.
Nothing. So we've got better shielding. We've got a more resilient cable. So that's two things. Anything else?
Well, just in interest of fairness, I'll put it up to full 60 hertz as well. Just repeat that test just to show, so that we're really driving it really to the edge of its capabilities.
Nothing.
And still rock solid.
Okay. And what about the physical cable itself? Just talk me through about that.
So there's a number of differentiating factors as well that make a high quality cable a high quality cable. So one of the things is obviously HDMI as it is has no standard locking mechanism as past formats like VGA and DVI had thumb screws on it to actually keep it in. With high quality cables, various different manufacturers have different takes on this. We have something called K-Lock, which actually enables that to stay actually in the HDMI port. So if we have a look at that, that will give you an image, and you can see that stays in there quite nicely. If I was to put that cable in, you can see it's not solid.
Brilliant. So these are the kind of niggles that we get a lot. We install in the Pro AV environment and suddenly people will report that there's a flicker on the screen or the screen's gone out. It's these kind of things. We have seen the cables being knocked in the back of installations. We do get interference. HDMI is a digital signal, so the signal will eventually just drop off a cliff. It doesn't tend to deteriorate, but you can see how easy it is to get that to happen with common things such as a mobile phone. Brilliant, thank you, Paul.
No problem.
So we're back with Kramer and Paul talking about different quality cables. This time we're specifically talking about USB-C cables. To start off, Paul, can you just talk us through what is USB-C?
Yeah, of course. So USB-C is a revolutionary format. What's so great about it? What's so revolutionary? Well, the fact that you can pass so much stuff over one single cable. So for example, you can pass video actually from your laptop up to a display. You can pass USB data back down from things like cameras or wireless keyboard and mice and stuff like that, and you can pass charging down the cable as well, and even Ethernet. So many different things over, let's face it, quite a small connector.
And what have we got set up here? What are we going to show?
So here we've got a laptop with USB-C output going into a docking station. That docking station is then stripping out all the component parts of USB-C. So we've got an HDMI, for example, coming out the dock into the display. We've got USB connected in there, so we've got the camera, for example, connected in. We've also got a wireless mouse connected in as well.
So we are ignoring the really cheap end charging type cables you buy for £1 off the internet.
Yeah.
We've got decent quality cable that we'll talk about being able to support decent speeds, but in this case, what are we seeing?
Okay, so what we're seeing here is we're seeing that there's no video coming from the laptop to the screen. So that video display channel does not work over this cable, basically. We are, however, getting USB data, so we can see, for example, we're getting an image back from this camera, and if I wiggle the mouse, you can see the cursor moving across the screen. So we're getting USB data back through it.
Right, so as I swap the cable over, just talk through what you're expecting when we go to a better quality cable.
Okay, so this cable we're trying now is a fully featured cable. That means that it supports all those features of USB-C. So what I'd expect to see would be the display coming up on there, and obviously the data that we saw before and all that sort of thing. So we'll just give it a little while just to negotiate with the screen, things like edits and things like that, and then we should see a display coming up. So there we've got the image from this laptop is going over that display channel up to the screen, and now what we're actually doing is accessing the camera app on this laptop to show the USB data as well.
Fine. So didn't get from the same length cable all the video running through, but what can we show with, if you start spending some proper money?
So if you wanted, this is obviously a 1.8 metre cable, so roughly about 6 foot in old money. This one is a 10 metre cable, so that's 35 foot. So if we put that in, exactly the same, it's fully featured, so it will support the video, it will support up to 10 gig of data, charging, all of those different elements. So again, when we plug these in, there is a certain delay while you get things like EDID negotiation for display, but eventually when this all syncs in, we will see the video passing from the laptop up to the screen. We can see this camera app here to show that the data is also passing back, and we'll also be able to see the mouse moving as well and see the cursor. So that's 10 meters that we're looking at here.
Brilliant. And any other kind of differences? You've got K-lock on this?
Yeah, indeed we do. So all the high quality cables we're looking at here have got K-lock on there. That's a locking mechanism that enables it to actually be securely into the port, so prevents it accidentally being knocked out in the middle of a presentation or something like that. Your worst nightmare.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
So we're back again with Paul from Kramer, looking at the last in our series of different qualities of cables. This time we're looking at data cable. Why are we worried about data cable, Paul?
Okay, so traditionally data cable obviously used in a wide range of networking applications, but nowadays in AV we use it for a wide range of different things. I mean, we use it for AV over IP, we use it for Dante, which is audio over IP, and we also use it for point-to-point transmission from point A to point B over a dedicated cable for getting signals like HDMI, which don't normally play well with distance over very long distances.
So what have we got set up here? What are we looking at?
Okay, so what we've got here, we've got a pattern generator here, which is capable of outputting up to full 4K, coming into a transmitter and receiver set, and coming into a display at the end here. And we've got two types of CAT cables here, one more expensive and one sort of relatively cheap, unshielded cable.
So Cat5, Cat6 shielded specifically for AV,
Yep.
just general, cheap data cable. Right, so what is the signal we're looking at? We're currently running over the cheap cable that's clicking in and out, but what signal are we pushing out?
So at the moment we're actually only pushing out 1080p at 60 Hertz. These transmitters and receivers, by the way, capable of doing full 4K. So we're at up to about 60 meters, so bearing in mind we're only at 50 meters here, we're only pushing 1080p at this point.
So 50 meters, and we are starting to struggle a little bit. If we're just going to introduce a little bit of interference, so standard wireless microphone you might find in any kind of installation, and you can see it immediately kills the signal. So if we then swap over to the same length of cable, but using the screened cable, and this is now handshaking. So now we're running exactly the same length of cable, same signal, but I will introduce the interference again. No interference. Can you actually increase the resolution for me? And so what are we running now?
So this is now up to 4K at 60 Hertz.
And there we go. And still no effect with the microphone. Thank you, Paul.
No worries.